Madam Speaker and Mr. Speaker and members, I rise today, too, like so many of you, to commemorate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and to support SCR 73, thanking my colleagues for authoring the legislation and bringing it forth as a member of the Black Caucus. You know, one of the things that's interesting to me is that I'm not here really to tell you how great Dr. King was and is in American history. I think we all know that. We know what he did for us. We know what he did for this nation. The question is not who was Dr. King, but the question is, who are you? That's the most important question on this floor right now. Who are we as a legislature? Who are we as a nation? Who are we as a people? And what are we going to stand for and what are we going to fight for in the end? That's the real question. We know the greatness of Dr. King and his impact on all of our lives. And so it becomes important as we talk about Dr. King that we recognize that the stands he took didn't always make him popular. When he came to San Diego in the early 1960s, he couldn't even find a black church that would allow him in their church to do a speech. And so he spoke in the gymnasium at San Diego State because the black ministers were afraid of this radical who had come to town. They were afraid of the impact it might have with the conservative members in San Diego. And as a result, he could not find even a black church that would let him in to do his presentation. So it's important to understand that this, even though we celebrate him today, he was not always a popular person. That what he stood for made people uncomfortable, made them question themselves, and they really just wish he would go away, even many members of the African American community. And so I'm often asked by young people, what do you think Dr. King would say today? What would he be doing today? What would he say to us? And I don't think he'd say anything differently than he said all these years. So when we look at one of his last presentations in 1967, where do we go from here? What do we do now that we've passed the Civil Rights Bill? What do we do now after the March on Washington? What do we do now? And he then began to ask some real questions about this nation and its relationship to the people that are in the nation. He talked about us developing a high level of divine dissatisfaction with the poverty in this country, a divine dissatisfaction with homelessness and people without adequate jobs, a divine dissatisfaction with injustice, a divine dissatisfaction with violence. As we look at where we are, we've come a ways, yes we have, but think about it. We have a president in the White House who's African American, who has probably suffered more attacks than any other president in the history of this country. During his presidency, we've seen the rise in violence, and we don't want to connect it to it, but we really have to look at it and say to ourselves, is this the expression of outrage that we have an African American in the White House? We have to ask questions about what happened at San Jose State and the things that made us all very uncomfortable. And King would say, you have to develop a divine dissatisfaction with the injustices that are here. You can't be comfortable knowing that so many of our children are not adequately educated. You can't be comfortable in knowing that we're incarcerating more people than we're sending to college. You cannot be comfortable with the conditions under which we exist. The struggle that King engaged in was not a moment, was not a temporary movement, but it really is a lifestyle. It is our life work. It is what we're here for. It's what we're about. And we will never complete it. We will always be working on it because I told you before that justice and freedom is a rare flower that has to be nurtured and cared for regularly. But hatred is a weed and it grows best in neglect. So I want to challenge you today, as so many African Americans are often challenged by their national anthem that says, stony the road we trod, and bitter the chastening rod felt in the day when hope, unborn, had died. It said, yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers have sighed? We have come over a way that has been watered with tears. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, so that out from the gloomy past to now we stand at last where the white star of our bright is cast. We have to ask ourselves the question, are we in the struggle forever? Can we basically fight this battle forever? Will we ever be satisfied with injustice and inequality? We have to say no. If we cannot, then we make mockery of King. We should never stand and say anything great about him because we're not willing to take up the banner and move forward. It is not an easy task. It is a life journey. And I ask you, as you vote today for SCR 73, that you make it a part of your life commitment and your life journey to stand always for justice and equality, even in the most uncomfortable times. Thank you.
Mr. Holden, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish I